After years of scientific research and government investigations, many questions still remain unanswered about the Chernobyl accident. The Chernobyl nuclear power plant is located about 130 kilometers north of the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv. It consists of 4 of its reactors designed and built in the 1970s and 1980s. An artificial reservoir of about 22 square kilometers fed from the Pripyat River was created to supply cooling water to the reactor. What caused the Chernobyl accident? The RBMK reactor 4 at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in Ukraine went out of control during a low-power test. Safety measures were ignored and the uranium fuel in the reactor overheated and melted through the protective barrier. Consequently, radioactive elements including plutonium, iodine, strontium and cesium were scattered over a wide area. Toxic smoke and dust were carried by the wind, along with inert gas reservoirs of fission products and naturally occurring colorless and odorless gases. Most of the released material was deposited close by as dust and debris, but the lighter material was carried by wind over Ukraine, Belarus, Russia, and to some extent over Scandinavia and Europe. Dozens more people contracted serious radiation sickness. Between 50 and 185 million curies of radionuclides escaped into the atmosphere. Several times more radioactivity than that created by the atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan. Millions of hectares of forest and agricultural land were polluted. Thousands of people were evacuated, but hundreds of thousands more remained in the contaminated areas. What are the major health effects for exposed populations? There have been at least 1,800 documented cases of thyroid cancer children who were between 0 and 14 years of age when the accident occurred, which is far higher than normal. Health studies of the registered cleanup workers called in, so-called liquidators, have failed to show any direct correlation between their radiation exposure and an increase in other forms of cancer or disease. Moreover, in the years that followed, many livestock were born with malformations, and in the long term, thousands of deaths from radiation-related illnesses and cancers were predicted. How was this area cleaned up after the accident? Liquidators were recruited into the area to help clean up the factory grounds and surrounding areas. Most of these workers were factory employees, Ukrainian firefighters, and many soldiers and miners from Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine. The Russian registries list approximately 400,000 liquidators as of 1991 and approximately 600,000 people were granted the status of liquidator. Is it safe to visit area now? You can definitely visit the Chernobyl region, including the 30-kilometer radius exclusion zone of the nuclear power plant, where all reactors are currently closed. What was done to ensure the safety of other RBMK reactors, so that this scenario will not present itself again? Lessons learned from the accident were a significant driving force behind a decade of IAEA assistance to the countries of Central and Eastern Europe and the former Soviet Union. Much of this work focused on identifying the weaknesses and improving the design safety of VBR and RBMK reactors. How do the inhabitants live now? There are 187 small communities in the exclusion zone, virtually abandoned to this day. Some residents have chosen to return to their homes within the exclusion zone, but children are not allowed to live in the area. What will happen to the plant now that it is closed? On December 15, 2000, the last reactor in operation at the Chernobyl site shut down and the decommissioning phase began. This includes fuel and waste removal and disposal, facility and surrounding area decontamination, including potentially radioactive soil and water. The fate of the fourth reactor where the tragic accident occurred in 1986 is as yet undetermined. What is the state of the protective shelter built around the fourth reactor? Thousands of liquidators worked in extremely dangerous conditions to contain the remains of the fourth reactor. Containment around the reactor was completed less than 6 months after the explosion at peak levels of radioactivity. Massive concrete and steel sarcophaguses built quickly using the arm's-length method have deteriorated over the years, creating a potentially dangerous situation. Additionally, plans were made to build a more secure and permanent structure around the existing sarcophagus. Both initiatives are expected to total more than $765 million over the next 8 to 9 years and are managed by the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development.